so thrilled for the world premiere of The Lost Bus. First question for you, Paul. I understand you were almost finished editing this film when you learned about the fires burning in Los Angeles this past January. How did the film first originate?
Jane and Jason phoned me up and said they had a project with Brad and based on Liz's book, and literally about 2 minutes in, they said, well, it's about the school bus and the wildfire in Paradise. I said, yeah, I'm in. And it was that simple. That was it, pretty much. It was easy, because it was such a great story and a momentous event, and then it was a blessed journey, so thanks to them.
And Jamie, what inspired you to adapt this book and story as a producer? What inspired you?
I can't believe I'm standing here with you all. It was August 20th, 2021. I was in Idaho, and I read an article in the Washington Post, which was a review of Lizzie's book. And then there was a sort of sidebar, which was the story of Kevin and Mary. And I said to my husband in the kitchen, I said, well, that's the movie. And he said, what? And I showed him the article, and I said, well, that's the movie. That's obviously how you make the movie. But then I didn't do anything. And then the next day I was going to visit my sister, Kelly. I was driving on the highway, I was listening to NPR. Thank you, NPR. And Scott Simon, Weekend Edition, said, my first guest today is Lizzie Johnson, the author of Paradise. Lizzie, you know, the book is amazing, but the story that really got me was the story of Kevin McKay and the school bus. And I pulled my car over, and I called my partner, Jason Blum, and I said to you, I'm going to send you 2 links. I said, I want to buy the book. I want to make the movie with you. I said, I think it'll be the most important thing either one of us ever do in the movie business. And 4 years later, we're standing here tonight. That's it.
Matthew, for you, this is a real life character, of course. Did you meet the real Kevin McKay? Was your character based on him, or did you make it your own?
I did meet Kevin. Kevin, where are you? Right there. I did meet Kevin. Kevin and I spoke a few times. And going into this, look, with something based on real events, inspired by real events. I think as an actor, probably as a director too, I suppose, you come into it with a little more responsibility, reverence, etc. But we were not telling a biography or documentary on it. So while the events are pretty much what happened, after I got to know Kevin and heard him tell his story many times, and would pick up where he would get caught up or something more effective in telling his story. And we would discuss some of those times, which were similar to the journey that I got to take in the film. But after that, it was, we fictionalized some things that keep the spirit of the truth, but fictionalized some things when we work with Paul. A lot of the father-son themes that were going through this, and that great line that Paul wrote, seemed like he wrote it on the day. I was feeling like I was too late as a son, and now I'm too late as a father. That and the fact of second chances, which is a theme that runs through this whole story after you see it. So that was my process getting into it.
And how did your real son also become involved in the project?
That's right, and my mother too. How about that? If you didn't hear her, I was the one. Levi, come on out of here, bud. Yeah. So Levi, so my mom has kind of always been a performer. I've actually, Richard Linklater put her and I in this one scene in a film we did, Burning, and she's always been performing. I had no idea that this young man, my son, was interested. But when I pitched the script to the family, as I always do before work, I got to the part about Kevin having a son. And he asked me one day, well, how old is he? And I said, he's about your age. And then he goes, you get agreed for it? And I didn't say anything. That wasn't enough to make me say maybe or anything. He came back 4 more times, and I said, okay. Now he's working for the idea. And I said, yeah. And I knew they hadn't cast the part. Pulled out the camera, worked with him on a scene, and sent that to Francine Mazer. And I said, I've never had a note. I said, I think he might be good enough for a callback. And she wrote back, I think it might be good enough to show to Paul. And I went, oh. I said, if you do that, will you do me one favor? Will you pull the last name off? So it's just, there's no McConaughey on the end of that. And she said, yes. Next call I got, that he said, he goes, that's the guy, that's the son. And then he was told, well, that happens to be Matthew's son. And then Paul Fash, he was like, even better. It's great. Yeah, let's catch your mom too in a couple of months, which he did. So this is all due to Paul. He's in this due to this man here to the left.
A great story. You were fantastic. Fantastic. Yes.
Real Sean, he's having a son too. Real Sean. Yes.
This is such a different role from your last wonderful performance in Barbie.
How do you mean?
Very different film. How did you come on board? Was it at a script stage? Can you talk a little bit about how you came on this project?
Yeah, I was sent the script and I knew that Paul and Matthew were on board. I'm a huge Paul Greengrass fan. I'm a huger fan now that I've had the chance to work with him. I liked Matthew McConaughey. Okay, just kidding. I loved you. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, my favorite. Truly. But you know, I read the script, and really, Mary, who is in the audience, it was Mary's journey, the call that she answered to show up for other people's children when she had her own children out in the fire. And Mary was so generous and spent so much time talking to me and answered all of my questions. And it was really valuable to hear her talk about the many roles and responsibilities that she had to hold on that 6-hour journey in that bus. She had to play the role of teacher to keep the children safe physically, but also she was deeply concerned with keeping the kids safe emotionally and trying to mitigate the emotional trauma that they experienced. And a lot of that meant keeping her role as a real life mother inside. And so it was really deeply so helpful to begin with Mary's story, and then Paul gave us so much freedom to discover and create these characters on screen. And what we really were constantly playing with was the line between how long can you be a soldier, how long can you wear the mask of protector, fighter before your own humanity cracks through. And we get to see Mary's vulnerability and that she is also a human facing her own mortality. And so all of those beautiful reasons and more drew me to the role, and it was a complete honor to get to portray Mary on screen. Thank you, Mary.